I thought my name Maya was just a name. Something my parents chose because they liked how it sounded, maybe because it meant illusion in Sanskrit, or simply because it felt right when they first held me. But when my father died 3 months ago, I found a photograph tucked away in his desk drawer. Behind it, a note written in his careful handwriting. Maya, if she ever finds out, will she forgive me? That's when I realized the man who raised me wasn't my biological father. And I was named after the man who ruined their lives. I grew up in Mendocino, a small coastal town in Northern California, in a weathered blue cottage where the scent of eucalyptus mixed with ocean salt. Dad worked as a facilities manager at the local community college, coming home each evening with stories about broken heating systems and campus maintenance that he somehow made sound important. Mom worked part-time at the town bookstore, filling our comfortable silences with updates about customers and plans for weekend trips to the farmer's market. You came to us after the darkest time of our lives. Mom would tell me while brushing my hair. You were exactly what we needed to remember how beautiful life could be. I never understood what she meant by the darkest time. The first crack in my understanding came during my cousin's wedding reception when I was 33. My Uncle Steve had been drinking wine since the ceremony, and by evening his family filters had disappeared. You know what's interesting, Maya? He said, studying my face across the reception table. You don't look anything like your dad. Different bone structure, different coloring. Then again, neither did he. The comment hung in the cool coastal air. Later, as Mom and I packed up leftover cake, I asked what Uncle Steve meant. Oh, you know Steve, she said, not meeting my eyes. He says things after he's been drinking. Don't pay attention to him. When I brought it up with Dad, he was loading the dishwasher in our small kitchen. Your uncle had too much wine, he said simply. People say foolish things when they've been drinking, but Dad's shoulders had tensed in a way I'd never seen before. 2 months later, Dad collapsed in the college parking lot during his lunch break. Massive heart attack. He was gone before the paramedics reached the hospital. A week after the funeral, Mom asked me to help clean out Dad's home office. The bottom drawer of his old oak desk stuck, and when it finally gave way, I found a small wooden box wedged in the back. Inside was a single black and white photograph. The photo showed a young man standing next to a younger version of my mother. They were both smiling, his arm around her waist, redwood trees visible in the background. But it was his face that made my breath catch. The same dark, wavy hair I saw in the mirror every morning. The same hazel eyes. The same slightly crooked smile. I flipped it over. In Dad's handwriting, Maya, if she ever finds out, will she forgive me? I found Mom in the kitchen with 2 cups of chamomile tea. She took one look at my face and knew. You found it, she said quietly. I set the photograph on the table. Who is he? Mom's hands trembled as she picked up her teacup. His name was Marcus Rivera. He was the love of my life before I met your father. And we were together for 2 years. I thought we were going to get married. She finally looked at me. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified to tell him. I waited 3 weeks, then asked him to meet me at that little cafe downtown where we used to go every Sunday. She paused. He never showed up. I waited 2 hours. His roommate told me he'd left for Portland that morning. No forwarding address. No goodbye. The words hit like physical blows. He didn't even know. He was 23, scared of commitment, always talking about maybe moving to Oregon to pursue his photography. Mom's voice grew softer. I was pregnant and completely alone. Too proud to call my parents in Sacramento. How did you meet Dad? 4 months later at the bookstore. I was reading parenting books, trying to figure out how to take care of a baby alone. He was browsing the computer programming section. A small smile crossed her face. He asked if I was excited about becoming a mother. When I started crying right there between the shelves, he handed me his handkerchief and sat with me until I stopped. And he knew about the pregnancy. From the beginning. On our 3rd date, he said something I'll never forget. Love isn't about where you come from. It's about where you choose to go together. But why name me Maya? Mom's face crumpled slightly. That was his idea. He said he didn't want you wondering about the man who gave you life, even if that man wasn't worthy of being your father. Your name would honor the good parts without erasing the complicated truth. The note. Your father struggled with whether to tell you. He wrote that note when you turned 18, Then again at 25, probably a dozen times. He kept meaning to have the conversation but could never find the right words. That night I drove to our old spot at Mendocino Headlands and sat on the bench where Dad had taught me to identify constellations. I was furious at Marcus Rivera for abandoning a pregnant woman at Dad, for keeping secrets at myself, for not seeing what was right in front of me. But as I listened to the waves crash against the cliffs, I started thinking about all the small moments. Dad teaching me to drive on the winding coastal roads, staying up all night, when I had the flu, cheering loudest at my high school graduation. The way he'd looked at me when I brought boyfriends home, protective but trusting. How he'd cried when I got my first job, proud of the woman I'd become. This man who'd chosen to love me before I was even born. He was my father. Not because of DNA, but because of choice and daily commitment. 3 weeks later, I went back to Mom with the photograph. I need to know more about him, I said. Not to find him, but because his choices shaped our family. Over the next few hours, Mom told me about Marcus Rivera, a talented photographer who dreamed of documenting the changing landscape of California. Creative but immature, passionate but unreliable. He wasn't a bad person, Mom said carefully. He was just young, scared. He wasn't ready for love that asks you to stay when things get complicated. Do you know what happened to him? I heard he moved to Portland, did freelance photography for a while. Got married in his 30s, maybe had kids. But I stopped keeping track after you were born. That evening, I sat by Dad's grave in the little cemetery overlooking the ocean and told him everything. I told him I understood why he'd kept the secret, but wished he'd trusted me. I told him I was grateful for the father he'd chosen to be. And I told him I forgave him for the secret, just like I was learning to forgive Marcus Rivera for his absence. These days, when people ask about my name, I tell them the truth. I'm named after my biological father, but raised by the man who chose to be my dad. Some people expect me to be angry or searching for my real father. They don't understand that family isn't a biology test. It's a daily choice to love someone enough to stay. I still carry the name Maya, but now I understand its weight differently. It's not just the name of a man who ran away. It's the name my father chose as a way of honoring the complicated truth of how our family came to be. Mom is dating someone now, a retired librarian, who makes her laugh and brings her flowers from his garden. Dad would approve. If you're carrying a family secret, here's what I want you to know. The truth has weight, but it doesn't have to be a burden. Love is bigger than biology. Family is stronger than secrets. Sometimes the most important thing isn't where you came from, but who chose to love you along the way. The man who raised me taught me that. His name was Robert Chen, and he was the best father a daughter could ask for. That's not a secret. That's just the truth.